realfaith.org.au.
It was a very long and difficult labour and needed a caesarean section. And I remember that first holding him and just looking at him and just going, oh my goodness, if I had been in a country without access to a life-saving caesarean section, I could have lost my life. My son could have died as well.
Welcome to Real Faith, conversations about the impact faith has on our lives and the challenges we go through, helping us today and giving us hope for tomorrow. That's real people, real life and real faith with Eric Scatterbo.
Well, today we have part 2 of my conversation with Sara David in Perth. She's sharing her life journey and how God tugs her heart towards a remarkable midwifery ministry. Last time she shared about growing up in South Africa and the events in her life that have shaped her into who she is today. This time we'll pick up the story as she's become a nurse and feels God is leading her to assisting women in childbirth. But first, Sara and her husband have decided to go on an adventure. Today we'll hear the amazing ways God leads her and her husband on an overseas trip.
We sold our house. We sold up everything, gave away I remember we gave away our furniture to refugees. And, it was tough because I had a cat. There was quite a significant moment because I had this cat and she was a real companion to me because Richard worked away a lot. Mm-hmm. And now I was going to have to find someone to look after her. And I remember there was a moment, I've got it actually in the back of my Bible, because it taught me about praying about everything. And I remember just saying, Lord, we're going on this trip. We've sold the house. We've done everything, but I still don't have someone to look after the cat. Just poured my heart out to God about this. Came out of my room. The phone rang. And this woman said to me, hi, Sara, my name is Alison, and I believe you're looking for someone to look after your cat. I could not believe how quickly that response came from when I prayed. And she looked after the cat for us for a year while we went traveling.
So some people might say, hey, it's just a cat, but obviously that touched your heart.
It touched my heart because it showed me that God was looking after my needs. But I had to go to him about them. He loves us to go to him about everything.
Yep.
And so it was so powerful because then traveling and going to all these different countries where we were totally out of our depth and being confronted by a lot of poverty, a lot of the unknown, I really learnt this practice of praying and asking God, for my every need. One of our first destinations was Vietnam. So this is in 1998, November. Mm-hmm. So Vietnam had only just opened up and we arrived in Ho Chi Minh City and got a taxi, and we wanted to go to this backpackers place, and the taxi driver had other ideas. He wanted us to go to where he wanted us to go to, and was starting to be quite aggressive and wouldn't take us to where we needed to go. And eventually my husband just said to him, look, just stop and let us out. So he just stopped and we got out. We had no idea where we were. This is before, smartphones, GPS, all of that.
You're just in the middle of nowhere. As far as you're concerned. We're in
the middle of nowhere. It's this busy road and there's just people everywhere. And I remember that I got out of the car and I turned around and I was just, oh, Lord, please help us. Turned around and this little Vietnamese lady came up to me and she had one of those Vietnamese hats on and she gave me a note. And I opened the note and honestly, this is what it said. It said, this is your guardian angel. Wow. Follow her and she will take you to your accommodation.
Really?
And then she gave us this other little book and it had all these little testimonies of other tourists, other people. And they said, listen, just follow this lady. She'll take you to where you need to go. So my husband and I, like, looking at each other, we just thought, well, what have we got to lose? We followed this lady. She walked ahead of us. So we were following this bouncing little, hat. And she took us to this backpackers. And we then turned around to thank her, and she was gone. She disappeared. And It was the exact right place.
She wasn't even looking for a tip or anything?
No, nothing. She disappeared.
Wow. I thought it was some kind of a business thing, but she actually was a guardian angel.
And, it was bizarre. It sounds like a crazy story, but that was my experience.
Yeah.
And, she was who she said she was. And, this learning to just really trust God and trust his provision, his protection, and his guiding and leading has been so formative in what I'm doing now,
Yes, we're slowly getting there.
Yes.
But some other things happened in your life that shaped who you are today.
Yes. So one of the other key things that happened on that trip was that, so I was a new midwife high up in the Himalayas in Nepal, in the Everest region. And we spent 5 weeks just walking in the mountains. And so we had a lot of time meeting women. I just loved meeting the women, talking to them, finding out about where they were giving birth, who was looking after them. And really became apparent that the obstacles and the lack of access that women had to sort of quality health care. And there was one time, and I met this health worker. We were sitting up high in the mountains, where you're so high and then you look up and there's more mountains. It was just incredible, snow-capped Himalayas. And she was desperate to know more about how to care for women during labor. And so I was drawing pictures in the sand because there was this language barrier, and explaining to her some things about caring for a woman during labor. And I remember just afterwards just sitting there and just thinking, oh, wow. It was like that, when I'd helped that young girl with the bike accident.
All the way back to your childhood.
That's right. I want to do this. I want to be teaching and helping health workers in developing nations.
God planted that seed in your heart there.
Totally. And I thought my husband would be on board and we could go and help right then and there. But it wasn't to be. He wanted to get back to Australia and back to work. And then we, started a family. And so that it was sort of put on hold. But now when I look back, I can see that it was percolating. It was that seed was being watered and prepared for what he had in plan. Yeah.
Now let's find out about the challenges you faced with the birth of your first son.
Yeah. So eventually at the age of 30, my husband said, okay, let's start a family. So he'd been very, very resistant. So that was part of the challenge. But I always felt that I didn't want to be one of those women that was deceptive and fell pregnant by my plans. I wanted him to be fully on board and had really cried out to God. And God spoke to Richard, and he just came to me one day and he said, it's now time for us to start a family. So fell pregnant, and it was not easy. And then was planning a home birth, and it was a very long and difficult labour. And unfortunately, Ryan, my first son, he was a big baby with a big head, and we needed to transfer to the hospital and needed a cesarean section. And I remember that first holding him and just looking at him and just going, oh my goodness, if I had been in a country without access to a life-saving cesarean section, I could have lost my life. My son could have died as well.
Yeah.
And it had a big impact on me, just that incredible gratitude for the care that I had received in Australia. Yeah.
So like the lady that you talked to in Nepal, the ladies that she's helping, if they were in the same situation as you, they wouldn't have made it.
Exactly, because I hadn't seen a health centre in Nepal, but I'd heard her stories and had actually walked the trails that they would have had to walk. In fact, when I was in labour, yes, and in fact, while I was in labour with Ryan, I remembering those times of those tough hikes, But for people in Nepal, they have to do it in real life. But for us, we can figuratively, when we're trying to ride the wave of a contraction, when I teach antenatal classes, we get women to think of a really challenging time in their life and how did they cope, and to go there in their minds, to ride the waves of the contractions and the pain, because it's intense. It's really hard work. And then you get to the summit, and you remember that beautiful view. So I did that a lot in both my labours with my boys. But
we should say that your second child, there are difficulties with your second son as well.
Yes. So with Matthew, again, a very difficult, long labour, and, I wanted to have a normal birth with him, and the doctor was supportive, and I had a wonderful group of midwives supporting me. But we got stuck, even before I went into labour, at 8 months pregnant. We were camping, my husband and I were camping with our little toddler, Ryan.
8 months pregnant, camping?
Yeah, we went camping.
You're a trooper.
Remember, we're up for adventure.
Yeah, wow.
And we were sleeping in the tent. This was New Year's Eve, and at midnight, the honks, the fireworks were going off, and someone let off some flares, and oh my goodness, there was all this noise. And the baby growing in my belly got a fright. And the next minute he did a whole lot of kicking. And I thought, oh, my goodness, he didn't like that. And the next day I realised that he had turned from being the head down position. He was now breech.
Oh.
And which was a huge complication for me because I'd had a previous caesarean section. And he really needed to be in a head down position for me to even begin to try and have a normal vaginal birth. So it just created this turmoil in me about what was I going to do? Do I just go in and have a caesarean section, or is God going to help me to have a normal birth? But, God knew the desire of my heart, and I found a doctor who was able to turn him, and he turned him to the head down again. And about a week later, I then went into labour. So I was already laboured well, but then got stuck at 8 centimetres, which was what sort of happened with Ryan. And I remember the doctor came in and just said to me, look, if you're not fully dilated in another hour, I'll give you another hour. And if you're not dilated in an hour, we're going to have to take you for a caesarean section. And my midwife was a Christian lady, and she said, right, I'm sending out a prayer request and we're going to pray. I just laid back on the bed and I was crying, and I'd given up. I just thought, yep, whatever. And the doctor came back 45 minutes later and checked me and said, oh, the head's right here.
Oh.
And the baby was born, huge baby. Doctor couldn't believe his eyes. He said, this is a toddler, so even bigger than Ryan. And it was actually a miracle that Matthew was born vaginally. And I remember that night going to bed and just thanking God. I was exhausted and just saying, what am I going to name this child? And God said, Matthew, gift of God.
Oh, beautiful.
And, it was God just saying to me that, I've honoured the desire of your heart, and this is Matthew.
My guest today is once again Sara David, who's the founder of a midwifery ministry called Living Child. As we just heard, Sara can identify with people dealing with difficult pregnancies because she had struggles of her own. We'll hear more of her story and about her life-changing trip to Papua New Guinea when we return right here on Real Faith.
The Word for Today is Australia's most widely read daily devotional, designed to give you practical teaching to keep you focused on your relationship with Jesus. Read it online or subscribe to the free printed edition at thewordfortoday.com.au.
You're listening to Real Faith, conversations with real people about how God works in their lives. If you want to know more about integrating faith into your life, our website is realfaith.org.au. Just go to the website and you'll find helpful articles about the impact faith can have on your life. Once again, that's realfaith.org.au.
Welcome back. I'm Eric Scadabo, and today, once again, I'm chatting with Sara David, who's the founder of a midwifery ministry called Living Child. Before the break, she shared about the difficulties she experienced with her own pregnancies. Now here's more of my conversation with Sara David.
After that, you had postnatal depression?
I was very, very depressed. Probably because the depression had not been picked up, when I was younger. Now, in retrospect, I look back and I'd sort of struggled with anxiety and depression for many, many years.
Apart from the whole pregnancy, just in general.
Yeah. Moving countries a couple of times, having to deal with long-distance relationship. A lot of things had happened in my life, and I had never really been encouraged to go and have some counselling or talk to anyone about it, and had grown up very fearful. And so that anxiety was now starting to really take over my life. And it began in the pregnancy with Matthew. It really started to raise its head. So just with incredible panic, fear, not being able to cope, just feeling I wasn't coping every day with just normal daily activities. And when Matthew was about 5 months old, and here I had these two healthy children smiling and laughing and having fun, and I remember I just couldn't join in their fun. And I thought, there's something wrong. There's something wrong deep within me. And I went and got help from the child health nurse and then my GP, who are fantastic, and then started a journey of seeing a psychologist and having some counselling.
So I'm just kind of hearing your experiences and knowing that you go on to help women give birth. You've pretty much experienced the highs and lows associated with it. So from firsthand experience how to help people.
Yes, and I think that is, it's a hard lesson to learn, isn't it? I mean, I'm now 53, and I can look back and I can go, well, yeah, I can see why that's happened, and I can speak with authority with people. I can journey with people because I know what it feels like. But at the time, it didn't feel nice.
Oh, yeah.
And you feel very alone, and you feel that, why is God allowing this to happen? But it absolutely has equipped me to be able to, be with people and speak into their lives and to have true empathy with people who are facing, huge difficulties.
And then eventually you're invited to go to Papua New Guinea?
Yes. It's in 2010, my parents' marriage broke up. My dad just walked out after 40 years of marriage.
Oh, wow.
And I was exhausted and overwhelmed, and our whole family was absolutely shattered. So I resigned from work at the hospital, and I decided to take a sabbatical. I needed to just look after myself and my children and focus there. And after about 18 months, my husband said to me, what are you going to do with your career, Sara? And I said to him, well, I know that I don't want to go back and work in the hospital system. And he said, you know what you need to do? You need to go and do your midwifery in a developing country. And I said, yes, that's always been my heart and my passion. So I started looking around, but everywhere that I looked, it was, you had to be away for a month. And I thought, I can't leave the kids when they're so little for so long. And I thought, the registration papers came through to re-register as a midwife. And I just put them on my desk and I just said, Lord, you know my heart. What are your plans for me? Maybe my journey as a midwife is finished now. And literally 2 days later, I went to pick my boys up from school. And a friend of mine whose husband is a Church of Christ pastor, she just sidled up to me and she said, Sarah, would you like to go and teach village birth attendants in Papua New Guinea? And I looked at her and I said, for how long? And she said, oh, no more than 2 weeks. And I said, yes. I said, yes, straight away. I went home, signed my re-registration papers, spoke to my husband, and that was the beginning of going to Papua New Guinea. So I went on the first trip in August 2012. So from November to the August, it was 9 months. So there was this pregnancy that had been gestating. And we went to a very remote area. But to get there was very long and hard. And I remember that by the time I got to this one little town called Wewak, I was hot, I was tired, all that sort of excitement and anticipation was now all of a sudden I started to feel this overwhelming fear. Because when we arrived in Wewak, there was no power, the lights were out, there was no running water, so there was no air conditioning, no fans. I was tired and I started to just cry. The tears and the emotion just started coming through. And I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop the tears. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, Mike, who was this Church of Christ pastor from Australia, who I didn't know very well, he's going to think, what on earth have I done bringing this crazy woman who is losing it
Who's
on
now
the
a
first
basket
night.
case, and she's supposed to be helping.
She's a total basket case. And I remember wiping the snot from my nose. And I remember just thinking, oh my goodness, Sarah, how on earth did you think that you would be able to do this? And at the dinner table by candlelight, there was this Papua New Guinean pastor. And he also, I was so embarrassed because there I am with, snot dripping. And he said, let's pray. And he just prayed. He prayed for our families back in Perth. He prayed for the journey the next day. He prayed that the river level would be high enough so that the boat could travel along the river. He was so specific. And then he prayed that whatever we did on this trip, it would be like a stone, landing on the water, and the ripple effect would be for God's kingdom. And I remember as he prayed, the presence of the Holy Spirit and just that peace came over me. And we left early the next morning, 4:00 in the morning, and it was dark. And I remember we were going on this dirt road it was a terrible road in a 4-wheel drive. And we were in the back of this 4-wheel drive. And as the sun was rising, you could see the mist and we were seeing the jungle. And at one point we got a flat tire. And so we all had to get out of the car. But it was cool and the mist. And I've got a photo and you just see this road. And now when I look at that photo, I can just see all this mist. I had no idea what was on the other side of that mist. I had no idea of the river. I had no idea about the people. But I just had the sense that God went before us,
So that mist and the unknown was kind of a metaphor for your whole situation at that point.
Absolutely. Yep.
But you went into the mist, so to speak, and into the unknown.
Yes. Yep. we went, we got on a boat at the Sepik River, and we traveled, and this is in a power boat, and we traveled for 7 hours.
7 hours?
It was unbelievable. It was so hot, and it was going, we were going deeper and deeper into the jungle.
At that point, were you asking yourself, what have I got myself into?
Yes. We were just like, where are we going? When are we going to get here? Are we
still in civilization?
We were not in civilization. It was, you could just see, you could see huts on the side of the river and people, and the further we went, the less clothes people had on. The children would be running around without anything because
so
they didn't
getting pretty
have
remote
anything.
there.
We were getting very, very remote.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to stop it right there as we run out of time for today's program, but we invite you to join us again next time to hear the rest of Sara David's life-changing trip to Papua New Guinea in 2012. Meanwhile, to find out more about the ministry she's founded, the website is livingchildinc.org.au. Once again, that's livingchildinc.org.au. Well, until next time when we'll hear more of Sara's story, I'm Eric Scadabo. So long, and God bless.
You've been listening to Real Faith, and if you have any questions or comments, you can send us a message through our website, realfaith.org.au. That's realfaith.org.au.
Real Faith is a production of Vision Christian Media.
This program is a production of Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, see vision.org.au.